It sounds like Jake Muzzin will be returning Monday night.
Yeah, but the league is going to probably be thinking, aren't they? Oh, you can't do the skills and you can't play in a 3-on-3, but you're good to go Monday night.
That's fine. They can pick whatever they want.
Yeah, no
as long as he, goes through with the protocol so that he doesn't get suspended. Like Ovechkin is going to miss a game. But Matthews, for starters, he can't afford to lose a game. But secondly, I think as long as he shows up and takes his pictures and does his autograph and talks with the media and all that, it's all good. So that's my understanding. That's why he's still going to go to St. Louis, and I'm sure he'll fly in tomorrow. He'll leave Saturday night or Sunday. And as I said, Jake Muzzin, he's going to be playing with the Marlies on the weekend.
Yeah, they're starting to set things up to say, let's go Monday night, fellas.
Muzzin's playing.
Yeah, Muzzin, get ready. Austin Matthews, you're not doing anything. You be ready for Monday.
That's big.
Yeah.
That's big. Like, Jake Muzzin coming back is big. I thought he'd be out longer than this. I have to believe he's going to play Monday. Like, unless he has a setback in the Marley game, but you're not going to go down and play a game in the American Hockey League and not be ready for the real stuff on Monday night. At the very least, he'll be back midweek in Dallas. And Morgan Riley, I haven't heard anything on him. I know they said originally 8 weeks, but I wonder if maybe he can get back a little bit earlier. And if you get to that point, Muzzin, Riley, that's what they need, right? They got 33 games here. And I was looking over the team and trying to get a read on who's going to take the most heat if they miss. And I know it's not a hypothetical that people want to deal with right now, but Columbus won again last night. Like, Columbus is now, what are they, 5 points up on them?
Mm-hmm. Florida 4.
Florida's 4. Carolina's a few points up. Like, the Leafs are really in a bind here. They're really in trouble. I'm not sure it's sunk in for people, but they really have a fight here. And yet, when you look at the big four up front, the forwards up front, I think they've made enough of a case, and if it continues to trend in the way that they're currently trending, where they're going to be able to say, we pulled our weight. They're not going to do it publicly, but if Matthews scores 55, that's a new franchise record for goals.
Yeah. Nylander gets 32.
If Nylander sets a new mark for goals and points, which he's going to do, like 32 and 70.
Yeah, Tavares and Marner have both been injured, but can scrape together.
Mitch Marner is 10th in the league in points per game. He's tied with Patrick Kane. 10th in the league. If he played 82 games, he'd have a 100-point season. You can't yell and scream at him. And Tavares is the one that I think of the big four has the most at stake, because he's been good, but he hasn't been great. By his standards, he's just been okay. He's had the injury problem. He's about a point a game. He's probably going to score somewhere in the mid-30s if you extrapolate over 82 games.
I get it, but that started kind of right from the get-go. It was like, something's just not right.
Yeah.
And then he had the hand injury, and then he came back on fire, and then he kind of slowed down a bit. It's not... I don't think it's what anybody expected. He's got to be that go-to guy.
Yeah, he's got to be. First year as a captain, he's the oldest guy. He's got more at stake because the runway isn't as long as these other guys, and he's not putting up record seasons. Like Matthews, Marner, Nylander are likely going to set new marks in terms of what they're doing this year. John Tavares will not. And because he's the captain and he's the elder statesman, and this team, if they continue to kind of fall off a little bit, I think he's going to really have to... He's got the most pressure on him for the final 33 games of the big four up front. And then it's Freddie Anderson, clearly, and Kyle Dubas. Like, those are the other two. If you take the big four out of it, it's Anderson and Dubas. They have the most at stake the final 33 games. Freddie Anderson he hasn't played that well. Like, he had an unbelievable November. Beyond that, his numbers were not great. He's given up a bad goal or two every single game. And Dubas is the architect. He put the team together. He paid the money out. Like, if we are here on April 15th and they miss, I think we're talking predominantly about Kyle Dubas and Freddie Anderson. And maybe a bit about John Tavares. I don't think we're going to be in a position outside of individual games where they didn't pull their weight, where anyone's going to be yelling and screaming about Matthews, Marner, and Nylander.
I always go to coaching, too. Like, Bill Belichick will always talk about attention to detail. If you can't focus, do this and that. Like, Sheldon Keefe has saw it, and we've talked about it. The coach's responsibility is to get the team to play defense. He can't teach him how to score. He doesn't teach Matthews how to score, but he could... Dude, since I've worked with you, we've talked about how brutal they are defensively. How come John Tortorella can get the Columbus Blue Jackets to do it? How come Trotz can get the Islanders to do it? And I know they're not the grittiest bunch, but you can at least focus on it and play defense. That's what I can't figure out.
I don't think he's going to get the brunt of that, though. I think Babcock will get more than him. It may not make sense. It may not be fair. But they'll say Babcock was here for 4.5 years in 23 games and couldn't implement any system or any work ethic on the defensive end.
The thing I can't figure out,
you got to give him more time.
I played on some defensive styles in Carolina where we didn't have half that much talent. If you play good defense, you're going to cycle the rear end off of other teams because you're going to create turnovers. You're always going to have the puck, as opposed to hope plays, stick checks, pinching, and then it's in your net.
I don't think Keefe is going to be in the firing line whatsoever.
No, it's not going to be firing line, but the way they play, and he talked about it, the immature games and the games where they're just throwing their sticks out. How did you let that keep going?
Well, and that's
sit somebody's ass on the bench. Does that not happen anymore?
He's got something at stake. I mean, I'm not disputing that, but he's in a honeymoon phase. They've played well predominantly under him, and the numbers would indicate that. They've had a few games that have been awful. Like, remember the game that really got Babcock fired was that game at Pittsburgh.
It was disgusting.
The Florida game was just as bad. Absolutely just as bad.
No kidding.
And the Chicago game was probably just as bad. So they've had some awful games under Sheldon Keefe, but Keefe, he's going to get a full training camp. He's going to get a new offseason, right? Like, he's kind of out of the conversation. And the depth guys...
Maybe that's why they don't go crazy at the deadline. It's just, you're getting CC off the books... Tyson Berry's off the books. We'll give him a full training camp, a rebooted D-core. Maybe this was just kind of a science experiment in itself.
Like reset the whole season?
I don't know.
Well, that might be how they try to rewrite history.
Yeah, but don't kid yourself. That's still going to be a massive failure for this market and everybody that's going to be talking about it.
They can say, and they might say that. And there might be some legitimacy
if they say, we're building for next year, that's like, okay, but...
Don't pretend like this year wasn't the real year. Yeah, no one's going to accept that. But that might be a case that can be made once we get into May and June and the dust settles and the emotion cools off. Okay, was it a failed season? Yes. If you miss by a point, it's a failed season. It's an absolute disaster. But do you let the salary cap go up a little bit? Do you let a couple pieces walk where it loosens you up a little bit? Do you feel like you put the right coach in place? Did you run into so many injuries where eventually it just burned you? You know, those are going to be deemed excuses by half the fan base and explanations by the other half, and it will depend on what side of the aisle you sit on, but hopefully they don't have to be in that position. They still got 33 games, but they really got to run off a lot here. Like, their schedule is not going to be overbearing. They don't play a lot of back-to-backs. They've only got one real road trip through California, and those California teams are awful. Really, you got to go 3 for 3 in California in March.
That's the standard now. The standard was good luck getting one 5 years ago. Now it's you got to get all of them.
You got to get all three, especially when you're a desperate team. But I think all these balls are up in the air with 33 games to go. And as I just pointed out, I don't think Matthews, Marner, or Nylander are going to be in a position where they're taking a lot of heat, even though they're the faces of the team and the best players. Matthews scores 55. Marner's averaging a 100-point season. What are you going to say to that?
If I was a player, that's what I'd say. I got 55 goals. What else did you want me to do?
What do you want out of me?
Yeah.
Like, there'll be individual moments.
Did you want me to be a better back checker? I got 55 goals.
Think about that. This team's been around for 100 years. 100 years. 54 is the limit. Rick Vaive scored 54. That's a great season, but there are teams... Gretzky scored 92.
Brett Hull scored 86.
86. Right? McGillney and Timu had 76.
Yeah, LaFontaine had 70. No, he didn't have 76.
There's
but
guys
they were
with
playing
70s.
together.
And absolutely. If he hits 55, he's scot-free. Step aside. You put forth a season we've never seen in over 100 years in Toronto. There's only been a few guys who have scored over 100 points in team history. Now, Marner's not going to get there because of the injury.
I don't even think Matt Sundin had 100
He never did.
No.
We're talking Gilmore, Sittler.
Keon.
Keon, I don't think ever hit 100. I don't know if there's anyone else. I think, like, Dougie's got the record at 127. He might be second with 111 the year after that. I think they might only have two players in franchise history to score 100 points in a year. So if Marner averages over 82, 100 points, what are you going to say to him?
Nothing.
And Nylander's comeback player of the year, according to the media.
That I don't agree with. Duclair in Ottawa. Duclair in Ottawa is on his last legs. bouncing from team to team. William Nylander is supposed to be doing this. It's like, okay, you signed a big contract. You're supposed to have a comeback year. You're not Duclair that's fighting for his life on a bad team, ripping home goals. Like that was Duclair the whole way. Not even close.
I don't know if Nylander should.
Well, that's where the big market comes into play, and that's what happens there.
Nylander, we all know he's having a phenomenal year.
Yeah,
but
nothing taken away from him.
No, I don't think he should even really qualify because he put himself in that position a year ago. Him and the Leafs, but he decided to stay in Sweden until December 1st.
Well, Duclair also put him in a position where he couldn't find a place to play, and he was bouncing around from team to team. But the situations are completely different.
Yeah, of course. Like, there's some arguing that McDavid should be up for comeback player of the year, which I don't even understand what that means because we know that he went through rehab in the summer. That's not how it works. He didn't miss any games last year.
His title is the best player in the world.
Yeah. How do you even possibly, with a straight face, suggest that he should be the comeback player of the year?
If he played this year and had 7 points, and he was McDavid again next year, then he's the comeback player.
But even then, I don't know if it should count because he just continued to do what he was always doing.
Yeah. Well, not after a 7-point season. What I mean is if he came back this year, was terrible, and then he bounced back, then he gets the comeback player of the year.